Okay, this video covers Gerald Stevens' Greek Intro New Testament, chapter 6, which begins on page 63. So I invite you to open your textbook and turn to that page. And it covers the Greek article. Okay, so here's what you need to know about the Greek article, and I'll try to point out some of the things you I'll explain things a lot as we go through the chapter, and I'll pause along the way to say, here are the most important things, like learn this, memorize this, okay? So here's the sort of introduction to the Greek article. In the Greek language, the Greek language has no indefinite article. It only has an article. So in the English language, we have an indefinite article as well as a what we call definite article. Indefinite would be a, like a book or a car or a house. Okay, the definite article, which defines, would be the book, the car, or the house. So A is indefinite, the is definite article, indefinite article. That's English. In Greek, there is no such thing as an indefinite article. So to be a real Greek thinker, you don't call the Greek article the definite article, because there is no indefinite article. It's just, in Greek, the article. Okay, so they have an article in the Greek language, and is much more versatile. It does a bunch more than in English. So in the English, and really the article in Greek functions closer to what we call in English the definite article. So it's more like the word the. That's basically what the Greek article is, but it does a lot more than the English indefinite article. So in English, the definite article, the word the, basically designates, it identifies. It's go get the book. I mean a particular book, not any book off the shelf, but a particular one. It identifies. Well, the Greek article does the same thing, but it does a whole lot more. Okay, so we'll get to all the various things it does. First thing you need to know is, what does it look like? How do you spot it in the Greek text? How is it spelled? That's what table 6.1 on the bottom of page 63. That's what it's all about. That's what it gives you. In that chart, which I have on the board behind me, I know this is really high tech, right? I've written it out, tried to do it as neat as I could, but what I've got on the board behind me, I want to point to, is table 61 on the bottom of page 63. So if you have trouble kind of making it out here, you can look at your book there. But everything you need to know about the morphology and seeing and recognizing the article in the Greek language is right in that chart. Guess what that means? You need to know that chart. There's only one chart in chapter 6 to memorize, and this is it. But here's the good news. You're looking at that and you're going, that's a lot. There's a lot of letters there, okay? Don't be afraid, all right? You've actually already know all this. You may not see it yet. Some of you have already seen, looking down, and you're going, I recognize some of that, okay? This is why Dr. Stevens puts the article, the chapter covering the Greek article, after first declension and second declension nouns, because the article uses the same endings that you've already learned, which I know you have memorized, right? Of course you have. You've memorized it by this video. I'm just kidding. But as you're working on first declension and second declension endings, you have the article. It uses all the same, with one or two slight variations, but believe me, they're not very confusing, and you'll pick it up. So here's how you understand this chart that's down there at the bottom of the page. Again, you have nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative. And just like you have in the noun system, right? So your articles are going to have case, gender, and number, just like your nouns. But here's the thing about the Greek article. They actually have a different form for every gender. So if you notice in the top, you've got the masculine paradigm, paradigm is the best word to use there. You got the masculine paradigm for the article, the word the, and we'll find out it does more than that. The neuter paradigm, and then the feminine paradigm at the far right of your chart there. And here's the other thing. With each paradigm, you have singular and plural pattern, okay? So with the masculine article, I have a singular and a plural. Why? Because you're going to have singular and plural nouns, right? And in the neuter chart, I have singular and plural, and in the feminine chart, I have singular and plural. But here's the good news, okay? And this is what I'm about to explain to you. He kind of gives you in detail on the top of page 64. Sometimes you get to reading this stuff, And I know Greek's brand new to y'all, and you can get very confused and go, I don't even know what to do with this. Everything you see on the top of page 64, those 4 bullet points, I'm basically about to tell you. Okay, he's just explaining this chart. If you're looking at it, you're probably thinking this looks very familiar to me. Well, it should, because it's basically first and second declension. So, for example, let me get you hold a finger right there on the article page on page 63 and flip to page 45 and look at table 4.1 on page 45. You learned this already. The second declension endings set 1, as, u, and then the o, the omicron with the iota subscript. See that dative? The on, which is that accusative. So you see that singular plural? Now look at your masculine endings. It's the same exact endings. It's the same exact thing with a couple of variations. Notice you have a tau in front of it. But this is the second declension masculine feminine ending. That's what it is. And the only difference is you put a tau in front of all of them. Notice the omicron nu is the same, the omega iota subscript, the omicron upsilon. You got some different accenting, which, by the way, is one of the fastest ways to recognize that it's an article. You get this circumflex following the article in most, not every. You get some different accents here, but you get the circumflex through the article, which is one of the telltale signs you got an article. But basically, you just memorize these patterns. You already know the ending. Just know that this ending, this u with the t in front of it, that's the word the. You say, well, does this get attached to anything? No, it's a word. It stands on its own. You're just going to have this in the text, and that's the word the most of the time. You're about to find out there's some variations. The only difference is that he's going to talk about on page 64, 64, is he's going to make sure that you note that this second declension has omicron sigma. Notice there's no sigma. But this omicron will become so common to you, you'll just know. Every time you see that in the Greek text, oh, that's a masculine singular, that's a nominative masculine singular article, okay? So if you know your second declension, just put a T on the front and you got the masculine article in the singular and plural. Now, this one should look very similar to you. Let me find the page on that. Yeah, flip the page 46. The neuter article follows the second declension neuter endings. And if you look at page 46, look down toward the bottom, table 4.3. This is the second set. You learned this back in chapter 4. The on, u, o, on, that's the singular pattern for nominative, dative, or genitive, dative, accusative. Notice you got it here, except for the n drops. The only one that's going to have variation in the entire article system mostly is this nominative masculine. You don't have a sigma, and this one you don't have the nu, and it's going to follow down here. No nu here, no nu here. But if I see a to, I know I've got a neuter singular nominative article. Okay, but look at the rest. Compare it to that chart on page 46. The u, the omega iota, and then of course you drop the n here. But notice this, exactly the same. You got the alpha as the accusative ending, the dative endings, the omicron iota sigma, the omega nu, which you've been learning so far, right? Every time you got that omega nu, I've got a genitive plural. It's the same way. Look at this, same way in the article. So this looks like an overwhelming paradigm, but it shouldn't be, because if you're learning your noun endings, you're really learning the article endings. You just have to know that pretty much almost all, except for a couple of these nominative ones here, you're going to have a tau in front of it. So here's your second declension neuter endings with a tau in front. You got the neuter article. The feminine article should look familiar to you because you learned that in the last chapter. That's the eta pure ending. So if you learn, this would be on page 54. If you turn to page 54, look down at table 5.3. You learned the eta pure endings. Notice this is exactly it, just with the T. The nominative changes, it doesn't have the T, but everything else. You get the T, but you got the same ending. Eta nu, eta with iota subscript, eta sigma. So if I learned my alpha pure and eta pure endings from first declension, I've got the feminine noun. The feminine articles. I just got to put a T in front of it. And then notice the plurals. Just like you learned in all 5 sets of the first declension noun endings, they're the same, right? The plurals stayed the same all the way through. It's the same with the noun, just got a T in front. So if you look at that plural pattern there and that eta pure or the set 1 alpha pure on page 54, look at either of those charts. table 5.1, table 5.3, and you look at the plural, that's what you got. Alpha iota, omega nu. You got the alpha iota sigma, alpha sigma for accusative. And that's what you have. So these are the nominatives and the masculine plural, masculine, neuter, feminine. These are your genitives right through there, that second column. The third column are your datives. And then the bottom column is your accusatives in those three genders for the article. So you memorize that chart. If you learn first, second declension, you just remember that the tau is on the front, and some of these nominatives will drop a letter. You learn those, and you've got the entire article. Okay, that's the morphology of the Greek article. That's it. That's what it's going to look like every time, everything on that chart. Now, the rest of the chapter, no more new things to memorize, except for basically you just trying to learn a little bit. This is the fun part about this chapter. Up to this point, you've mostly been learning, well, a little bit in the present tense, some syntax. You've learned a little bit of syntax in the present tense, but you've mostly been learning just morphology, how things are spelled. The rest of this chapter, chapter 6, Dr. Stevens starts to get into syntax, a little bit of how the article functions, and you get to see some real cool things that the Greek is doing. You don't always see in the English. It doesn't come out because the English article doesn't do any of these things. Well, it does one, but not the rest. So the rest of the chapter is basically just helping us to understand some aspects of the article and how it functions. So let me walk you through some of that. So let's talk about structure. And really that whole section on structure, page 64 and on to the top of 65, he's just trying to explain to you some key terms to understanding the article in the Greek. So anauthorus basically means a noun with no article. So how does, in Greek, do they communicate a book if they don't have a letter for a? Because none of these are translated a, ever. There is no a, okay? If you have this, it's most of the time going to be translated the. This is what we would call in English the definite article. It's equivalent to the definite article. In Greek, it's just the article because that's all there is. So in Greek, there's no a. There's no a book. So how do the Greeks say something non-specific? How do they say a book? Well, they just don't put the article. So we call that anauthorus, and that's what's there. And he gives you an example: from glory to glory unto glory. Notice that apo, doxes, eis, doxon, no article. Okay, I'm going to erase this because I'm going to write a bunch of stuff here real quick. Okay. So, let me show you a couple things here. So, if you look, I won't be able to, it'll take way too long to write all these out. I'll just write out part of that example. That's from anauthorus, right there in the middle of page 64, and he's got this word underlined. He's got some more Greek there. But this is a preposition. This is not the. Notice, you got a noun here. That noun, if you've learned your vocabulary, you know that's the word for glory. And you're going, I got no article. Well, that's the way of saying a glory, not the glory. If they wanted to say the glory and specify it, well, they would put that noun right there. Drop something. Okay. So that's what an author is. And articular means a noun with the article. So if a noun doesn't have an article, it's an authorist. If it has the article, it's articular. Those are just terms that grammarians use. And you see some examples there. For example, under articular, you have tas basileas, tu kosmou. See that? Tas basileas, tu kosmou. And that is the kingdoms. But see the tas on the front of basileas, the kingdom? You see that tas? Well, that's that's your article. If you flip back the page, you'll see it there. And if you've memorized, and you don't even have to, at this point, you don't even, you may not even have memorized the whole chart, but you can locate it because you know if you know your first and second declension endings. But this would be on chart 6.1 on page 63. Okay, so this is, you got basileas, and you see this if you've memorized all your nouns, and you know, oh, all your articles, you know, this is an article, this is the, and then I won't write it all out, but the kingdoms, okay, and it's plural, the kingdoms. And It's an accusative feminine plural. It's accusative feminine plural. Now, next thing you're going to see there is this word he uses that he introduced you to called concord. Now, what is concord? Concord is basically a term that grammarians use in order to communicate, in order to say that that a noun and an article will always agree with one another in their case, gender, and number. So let me just read out how he says it. Concord is grammatical agreement. The noun will agree with the article in case, gender, or number. Really, you can use concord to refer to two nouns that agree in case, gender, and number. Here we're talking about the article and a noun. But that's what it means. It means when two words, two nouns, or an article and a noun agree, they're in the same case, gender, and number, we say they're in concord. So he's just introducing you to a new term. Here's the cool thing. In Greek, the article and the noun that it goes with will always, always, always be in concord, okay? Which means you see that bullet point he's got on page 65 there? This is what's awesome. In the Greek text, if you're tripped up on some of the noun endings, you're not quite sure, is that noun a feminine or a masculine? I don't remember the vocabulary. I don't remember if it's a feminine or masculine. If it has an article, you can locate it. If you know your articles, because remember, there's an article for feminine, there's an article for masculine, there's an article for neuter. So if you know your articles and you see an article in front of a noun, if you locate the article, oh, that's a masculine singular accusative article, then you're going to know what the noun is because they'll always be in concord. So article location declares noun location. And he gives you an example. That doesn't mean they're spelled the same. He gives you a warning. Doesn't mean they're spelled the same. It means that they're in concord. So he gives you an example there on page 65. Let me write this a little bit over. I'm trying to write it big so you can see. Press a little bit harder. Ek tes cardias. Cardias. Okay, so let's say you're in what he's trying to demonstrate here is that this article and this noun are actually in concord. This is a preposition, ek, or from or out of. Okay, so if I were to translate it, it would be from or out of the heart, from the heart. Okay, so ek tes cardias. Okay, now what he's warning you here is that it's not that the spelling will always be the same. You say, well, that ends with an alpha sigma. That ends with an eta sigma. Doesn't matter. They're still in concord because this is a feminine. This is a feminine singular article. So this is going to be feminine. That tells me, even if I don't remember this, the gender of this, by locating this, I can locate this. So these are in concord. It's a feminine singular, and then this one is a feminine singular. It's a genitive. So genitive, feminine, singular on both of those. Doesn't mean the spelling will be the same, but the location will be the same. There'll be the gender, the case, and the number will be the same. In other words, you won't have a plural article and a singular noun or a feminine article with a masculine noun. They'll always match. Okay? So that's what he means by concord. And he gives you some other position. Here's the other thing about position. He deals with this on the pages 65 and 66. The other thing to know about articles is that the position can often change. Okay? So in English, you always have the article with the noun, the book, the car, something like that. But notice in this example, there's different times in Greek where you will have an article separate from the, put my accent wrong, separate from the noun that it's connected with. And this is just one example. Gar is a conjunction, means for or something like that. It means for most of the time. And it's what we call postpositive, which means it never comes first in the sentence. The Greeks like to put it second. And so what he's showing you here is that you can often get the article and the noun that it goes with can be separated. In the Greek, can't do that in the English. But in the Greek, you can. This article, ta, actually goes with ergon. It actually goes together. but it has this gar, this for in between it, separating it out. You can do that in Greek. You can have the article and the noun separated. They're still in concord. Okay. All right. So the rest of this chapter is function. This is where he gets into syntax, and he's going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4 major ways the Greek article functions. We're getting into some fun stuff now. It's the syntax. You do not see this in English. The English article cannot do this. And oftentimes in translation, when you're just reading the English translation, you're not going to see some of this stuff. You have to kind of see it in the Greek to catch some of these things. So he can introduce you to 4 things that the Greek article can do. The first thing is specify. Now this is the same. That one is the only one that's the same as the English definite article. It specifies the. He throws out some variations. He goes, sometimes in the Greek you'll have a proper name. There are some times where, let me back up. There are some times when the article is present in the Greek, but you don't translate it. Even though it's present, it's there in the text, you don't translate it. And he gives you some examples on the bottom of page 66. Whenever you have a proper name, whenever it's a reference to God, or some abstract nouns. Now, if you're sitting here going, oh, I got to memorize all that? No, not really. Everything in this function section, don't have to memorize. You just have to really start to become familiar with it, okay, as you're learning to translate and thinking through. But there's nothing to memorize here. Just know that sometimes you'll see the article with names, like that first example, and you'll see this in the Greek text, New Testament all the time. It'll have the article with Jesus' name. You don't translate it, the Jesus. Just drop it. Just pretend it's not there. It's just Jesus. Sometimes you have some nouns that are anauthorous, which means they don't have an article in the text, but you translate them as though they have the article. And the reason why is they're inherently specific, like sun or moon. You can translate it the sun or the moon, even though it doesn't have the article in front of it. And you say, well, how do I know which ones? Well, don't worry about that right now. You're going to kind of learn that along the way, learning Greek. You get a sense and a feel for it, okay? The second thing, so it can specify with some variations. The second thing the Greek now can do, and this is cool, it does what Gerald Stevens refers to as grouping. The English has no equivalent for this Greek idiom. It can't do this, never does this. But in Greek, the article can be repeated or sometimes separated from the noun in order to group in various words. And the Greek writer will do this in order to make sure that the reader doesn't miss that he wants to connect certain concepts. He'll actually use the article in the text, repeating it. You don't translate it, but repeating it to connect ideas to make sure you don't miss it. And he gives you an example on the top of page 68 of how this roping works. So you have, let me just write this out real quick. You have ha, nas. I know my handwriting is horrible, isn't it? To, theou, ha, en, and I'm going to come down here, even though this part goes off there. To, I'm not doing all my accents, I'm trying to hurry here. Urano. Well, that marker's running out, isn't it? Hopefully you can see that. Urano. I think you can. Okay. But you can look at your book on the top of page 68 there and see it. Let me add some of my accent marks so you can kind of, okay, I did all that. That one there. This one. Okay. So here's an example at the top of page 68 to show you how roping works. Here, the Greek author, you've got an article here, ha, and if I know my article endings, I know that that's masculine singular, right? There's masculine singular, nominative. So I have an article here. Let me do it in red. I have an article here. I have an article here. I have an article here. So I've memorized those, and let's say I know these vocabulary words, and I've learned them. So naos is temple, and I think he gives you translations there. Yeah, he does. So naos is temple. Theou is God. So, oh, gosh, I didn't circle that one. We got one there. This is a preposition, which means in. And then I've got another article, and urano is heaven. Okay? So, yeah, I knew that looked weird. It's a dative. Heaven. Okay, So this article goes with this noun. This article goes with this noun. But wait a minute. And this article goes with this noun. But what's this article for? Right here. That's doesn't have a noun going with it. Well, this is an example of roping. You can do this in Greek language. You would repeat the article from earlier in order to signal to the reader that what comes next, this prepositional phrase that starts with into urano, he's signaling with this article, you need to connect it with this phrase, with this right here. Really, this whole thing goes together. But this noun. So it's the temple of God, which the temple in the heavens. Okay, so it's the temple of God, which is in the heavens. Okay, or the heaven, or usually that's a plural. It's usually like a plural idea, the heavens. Okay, so this is, see what's happening there. You can rope in by repeating the noun of the article, and you wouldn't always translate it. The temple of, notice this is, remember the previous section? This is God. It has, notice this has the article. You don't say the God. You just drop it out because it's put with that name. It's the temple of, that's a genitive, of God. And I can just skip this and go in the heaven, or in the heavens, right? The temple of God in the heavens. Or I can say, which is in heaven, trying to make sure you understand that what's in heaven is the temple. This is interesting. The temple of God, which is in heaven. So what's in heaven is the temple. Because the temple is what's being repeated and connected with this phrase. So you can rope things in. Sometimes the noun, look at that next example on page 68. Article pairs. Sometimes the noun, and he's underlined it to help you connect this. You got huper, you see that? Huper, that middle example under article pairs on the middle of page 68. Huper tes tu kosmu zoes. And you see the taste, that first one, I'll go ahead and write part of it out here. Won't do the whole thing, but looks like this. Taste. Looks like this. Well, let me put the, this is this huper is actually a preposition. Put the article in the wrong way all the time. Huper, taste, and then you've got tu kosmu, right? So that's the earth, or the cosmos. Sorry, the cosmos. So tu kosmu. So notice what's happening here. And then there's another word after that, zoes, which is life. Life. I ran out of space, but zoes, which is life. But I want you to see something here. So you learn your preposition, right? So that's a preposition. Here you have a noun, and here you have a second noun. Now this noun is in concord with this, back up. You have an article, you have a second article, and then this second article is in concord with this noun, kosmu, or cosmos, so it's the cosmos. But where does this noun go with? It actually goes, I didn't write it, but look down at your page there. You see that zoe, zeta, omicron, eta, sigma, that comes after cosmu. It goes with that word. But notice what's happened is the writer has separated the article from the noun that it goes with, way out here, the life, in order to rope in the cosmos. These two phrases go together. You see how Stevens is translated, for the life of the world. It's the life of the world. Now, he doesn't have to create like a sandwich separating the noun from the article like that. He could have put tes, zoes, tu, kosmu. He could have done that and communicated the same thing. The reason he separates the article from the noun and puts the noun at the end is because he wants to make sure you don't confuse these two go together. He's roping them in to connect those ideas. And here's the thing. Sometimes in the Greek, that'll get really long. This is a very short one. Sometimes there'll be a bunch of words in there, and you find that, see an article, and you're looking for the noun, and you find it way at the end over here. He's roping it all in together. The third example, I'll just breeze over, antecedent reference on the bottom of page 68. That is just, he's just saying we do this in English too, but in the Greek text they do this a lot. First time something's referred to in a story, like the example on top of page 69, it could be anotherus, wise men, wise men came from the east. After that, it'll be the wise men, and they'll put the article in. So after it's referred to the first time in a story, second, third, fourth time, they often put the article. The last and final, the last and final thing that he's going to introduce to you in this chapter on the article is the substantive substitution. Now, what this whole section is about is another function of the article. And what he's basically saying is that the article can function as a pronoun, or it can function as a demonstrative noun in a sentence. And he gives you examples. Look in page 69, it can function as a personal pronoun. And he said to them, you see that ha de lege? See that ha de lege? Looks like you got the omicron. He's underlined it to kind of point it out that this is an article. And then you've got that postpositive de, delta iota. I'm sorry, delta epsilon, and then lege autus. Autus is a better word. Autus. Ha de lege autus. Now, the article, you're looking at that and you're going, wait a minute, this article, I see the ha, it's masculine singular, nominative, but there's no masculine singular nominative noun in this sentence. What noun does it go with? Oh, it's standing on its own. It's basically functioning as a personal pronoun. In its best translated sense, it's masculine, he. And you see that in the translation he gives you. So English article doesn't do this, but in Greek, the article can actually be a pronoun. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, does that mean there are no Greek pronouns? No, actually there are Greek pronouns, and you're going to learn those in another chapter. There's a whole system of Greek pronouns. You go, well, why does the article function as the Greek pronoun? Most grammarians say this is an example of Hellenistic Greek, lazy Greek. So you have personal pronouns for he, she, it, and all of their forms. But what happened is many would say for, street Greek, in street language, and less classical, it got faster and a little bit more lazy and found a roundabout, faster, easier way to do that rather than writing out the whole pronoun. They just started using the article, and some grammarians have argued this is an element of Hellenistic Greek. I've never studied classical Greek quite as much as I've done Hellenistic to know how common this kind of thing, but a lot of grammarians have argued that it's not nearly as common in classical Greek. You see it more in Hellenistic. So it can function as a personal pronoun, or you see in number 2 as a demonstrative pronoun, sometimes this or that. And he gives you an example on top of page 70. So you've got the ha, de, Petros, see that capital P, capital Pi, Petros, kai, hoi, sun, auto. That's the Greek on the top of page 70. You see that? So he's giving you an example of the article functioning as a demonstrative pronoun. And the oi that you see there underlined in the middle of the sentence, sun, autu, that's a nominative plural masculine article. But there's no nominative plural noun in the sentence. Remember, it has to be in concord. And when you don't see another noun in the sentence that it's in concord with, you realize it's functioning somehow in a different way. And here it's functioning as a demonstrative pronoun. And you say, well, how do I know it's not a personal pronoun? Well, in this case, you only know it from context. It's like referring to some other people in the story. Now Peter and those who were with him. You don't say they and they with him. You say those who were with him. Notice how it flows a little easier in just translation. So that's it. You got the article chart to memorize and just kind of learn these 4 major different kind of functions of the article, and you've got the Greek article.